Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them.
The compassion that you guys have really shines through.
Rachel and Tina cultivate a sense of comfort.
It was such a rewarding experience.
They were great hosts.
It was amazing. You are so kind.
Spoonful of Strength has given us this great platform.
They were so welcoming.
Here are your hosts, Rachel and Tina.
On today's episode, we have Kate, who was from season 1, that spoke with us about her miserable malalignment syndrome. And she's also a occupational therapist, and she's joining us today. She's going to talk to us about those that live with chronic illness on a daily basis can make adaptations for their energy conservation. So thank you so much for joining us, Kate. We're happy to have you back.
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I have taken the last few months to recover from my broken femur from the femoral osteotomy. And it has been delayed in healing. So I've, had to put a lot of extra work into my healing. But I get an x-ray later this week, and hopefully I have really good news from it.
That would be good. And I see your arm's in a cast. What's going on with your arm?
So I have something called ulnar impaction syndrome as well, and it's been causing a lot of pain in my wrists, for both wrists, but my right has been pretty bad to the point where it hurts to just like move my entire arm. So I have been put in a cast, and hopefully it'll take away some of the pain, but likely I will need surgeries on my arms as well.
Wow. So tell us about your background in occupational therapy, because we brought you in today as a co-host. We're not interviewing you, but we're going to have a discussion here just about energy conservation. And tell us about your background in occupational therapy.
So I have been an OT for 7, almost 8 years now. And I initially went working in the pediatric field. I am a school-based occupational therapist, but I do have experience for my clinical rotations working in the hospital. And it's my goal after I have all of these surgeries to get back to working in more of a physical disability realm.
So part of what you shared with us of the energy conservation is the 4 P's of that. Can you walk us through all of those? What are the 4 P's?
So the 4 P's are prioritize, plan, pace, and position. And those 4 P's are very important when it comes to using these strategies and techniques to reduce the amount of energy or the amount of spoons that we're using to complete our tasks and our daily activities. And so really it's about like finding the balance between rest and then also being able to do our daily occupations and activities.
Okay. And that's important because I think that it's so hard. I mean, we've talked about it on numerous episodes of like having so much to do and not having the energy to do it. And just that constant back and forth of not overdoing it, but feeling like you are at least productive, in the day. First P is prioritize. So what does that mean?
So prioritize means deciding what it is that absolutely needs to be done today and the things that can be done later. So personally for me, I like to do the difficult tasks, like spread them out throughout the week rather than doing all of the hard things in one day, trying to get it over with and then end up in a lot of pain later. So like an example of this is like, I won't do laundry and grocery shopping on the same day because that will use up way too many spoons and I will likely be in severe pain later. So I will choose to go to the grocery store because we all need food and laundry can wait a few days. And there's plenty like of other examples too. Like you might consider making a list like in the order of importance of the things that need to get done and also like set realistic goals for yourself. and like ask yourself, what is it that I want to achieve today? And then what is it that I want to achieve, in this coming week or this month, year, etc.
Mm-hmm. I like the prioritized portion because I think a lot of times we make lists of everything we need to do, but we don't break it down into what has to be done versus what needs to be done, but not necessarily today. And I don't do that, but it makes sense because then I know what really has to be done and I focus just on maybe those 2 or 3 things. And then if I can get through those and I still have some spoons left, then I can kind of dig into the rest. So
yeah. Prioritizing is definitely like super important of trying to figure out, because I know like I tend to spiral if I have too much on my list and I can't figure out what's most important. So sitting down and making that list, and maybe even just something as simple as numbering things, of going, okay, what's the order? These are the things I want to get done in the next couple days. What's the order that I want to make sure it gets done?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and when you see a list, like it can be completely overwhelming, like of all the things that you really need to do, but just taking a minute to like think, okay, what is the absolute most important, and get that done first. And if you don't have the energy to do, the rest, well, then
It's okay.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
You're almost giving yourself grace to be able to say that was not important enough to prioritize today. So it's okay if it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's extremely important, giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're an achiever and you want to get all those things done on your list. Well, sometimes like thinking that way can actually like set you back,
Yeah. So the next P is plan. So walk us through what that is.
So planning is thinking ahead and trying to avoid like taking extra steps or extra measures during your daily activities. So an example of this is like I have mobility limitations, and going out of the house can be challenging, especially because I have stairs. So what I do is like I will plan my outing. So like I stay out, I do like what I need to do, and then only have to tackle the stairs one time because to me that uses more energy going up and down the stairs than the actual outings themselves. So, thinking ahead of time, planning, okay, like what is it that I can do to avoid doing anything extra in my day?
One thing that I noticed, like on your what you sent us as far as planning, is write out your grocery list beforehand so you know exactly what to get and not have to wander around the store. You feel that more people, especially since COVID, are still like kind of embracing the shopper, the home delivery option. And I feel like before pre-COVID, pre-2020, most people still tried to figure out how to conserve their energy to do grocery shopping. And I almost feel like I know I haven't gone back to doing my full weekly grocery shopping in person. I still like it just became so convenient for me to be able to do that I realized how much that is actually helping me of ordering and just having it delivered.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually just started doing that too, where like I've, been ordering those like kits that come to your house and you can.
Oh, the meal kits. Yeah.
Yeah. The meal. Yeah.
I mean, it's for me, I also like grocery shopping. Like, I don't know why, but I do. I like to go and like, see the things and feel the fruit and, all the things.
But I know delivery, there's a cost there, but you also have the pickup option, which normally is free. So if somebody can't afford to, do the whole membership with the delivery, the pickup option is nice because at least you don't have, for people who are fatigued, you don't have to walk the aisles. But I know for me, I do delivery every week. And then on the weekends when my husband's home and I, have my scooter, he can get out my scooter and all of that. Then I'll go to the store and just get a few things that I want to pick out, like the fruit and the meat and all of that. So it saves me a little bit there, but I still end up forgetting stuff. It's amazing how many times I end up going to the grocery or ordering it because I've forgotten something. You can't make hot dogs without hot dogs, but I'll certainly try. But yeah, that's a great tip of trying to do that, because that takes away quite a few spoons if you think about it.
Right.
Shopping, I think, is one of the most shopping and cleaning are probably the most strenuous activities that somebody can do with chronic illness. So
even like I started using those the like electric carts in the stores, and even that takes so much energy to maneuver your way through the store. And I think there's also that emotional, it drains you emotionally sometimes if if it's a little extra difficult to get through the aisle, or people kind of bump into you, or you can't reach something, that also takes away some of your energy.
Yeah. I hate those. They are nice for people. I just hate them because they go too slow. They're too big and bulky. And then of course you can't back up without the whole world knowing you're backing up. It just drives me insane.
Well, there was one time where my cart died in the middle of the store, and I was like, well.
That's happened to me actually as well. I think my husband and my son had to push it back to the front of the store and get another one. But yeah, that's so funny. So talking about planning, the grocery list is great. Go ahead.
Oh no, there's also planning when it comes to taking breaks, planning your breaks. For example, if you're going to a community event, you can plan ahead and ask people if there's seating options available to you, or make sure you plan and bring your mobility aid if you need it. And then also on the topic of seating is if you're spending time in your kitchen and that you get exhausted when you're cooking, maybe considering having seating options available to you so you can take a break or sit on a stool or whatever, and take those breaks as needed. Another way to plan ahead is by making sure that you bring all your materials that you need with you, gather it ahead of time. So for example, you're going into the bathroom to do your hair or whatever, make sure that you have all of those materials there, so you don't have to go back and forth in between rooms. So thinking that way too, what it is that you need, the supplies that you need for that task.
Yeah.
And also ask for help, if you need it, plan to ask people for help.
Be okay with asking for help,
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I think is a hard one for a lot of people, asking for help part.
I definitely struggle with that one.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that. Everybody probably is.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one for everybody. Just being okay with asking somebody for help, that's certainly. And I like what you said about, making sure you have everything, a good tip, for doing your hair or whatever, is to have those little caddies or something, and having something for your cleaning supplies so that you can take that room to room, or having something with all of your hair stuff, and making sure you're organized just so everything's in the right place so that you're not making extra trips. I think that's a great tip. So what's the third P?
The third P is pace. So that means taking it slow when you're completing your tasks so you can reduce the amount of fatigue that you might feel after doing it. And also rushing through tasks can also, influence your safety in performing, and your ability to perform those tasks. So it is really important to pace yourself and take your time so less accidents happen.
Yeah. Do you have a hard time doing that?
Absolutely. I mean, even as an occupational therapist, like, I know these things, but I do find myself, rushing throughout my day. The ultimate one, as I mentioned before, is the stairs. If I'm in a hurry and I'm going too fast, there's been times where I have kind of stumbled a little bit, and I'm lucky that I have, I've avoided anything big happening, but definitely, I work on it every day, like reminding myself to slow down and take your time. And if I get somewhere late because it took me a little extra time to go down the stairs, it's better than hurting myself.
Definitely.
Yep. I know one thing I'm guilty of, okay, I wake up and I'm like, I have all this stuff on my plate I need to get done, and I'm feeling really good. So you try to, do you find that there's others out there that tend to, that are maneuvering through a chronic illness, we're like, okay, well, this is a really good day, so I need to get all this stuff done while I'm feeling well, which almost kind of messes up the pace, so to speak,
Right.
because you're setting yourself back trying to do too much. So you're truly not pacing yourself.
That's not helpful for the rest of your week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pacing's another hard one, just because it is I don't know if it's something with MS, or it could be something completely different from MS, but my mind is racing 24 hours a day. It's constantly, it's just almost like noise in my head, as far as, everything that has to be done and when it has to be done. And I get so unfocused because there's so much going on, that it's so overwhelming. And so, to be able to make a list and be able to make a plan and then pace yourself, is a good idea, because, I suck at that. I'm sorry, but I suck at all of this, actually. It's
a work in progress for everybody, whether like you're an occupational therapist or not. Like it's a struggle.
It's so hard. Yeah. And I mean, I've been doing this for a while and I'm getting better, but it's still, my son moved last week and over the weekend, and it was a 2-day process. The first day I was so good. I didn't touch a box. I didn't pick up anything. I didn't go down the stairs more than I have. So proud of myself. And I was still exhausted the whole day. And the second day I was like, I just want this to be over. So I, got a little bit more into it, and that didn't work either. So, it's definitely a struggle. You talk about deep breathing strategies during your breaks. Can you elaborate on that? This information that Kate was kind enough to send to us, and we will probably put this in the description so that if y'all want, to have something printed out, that you can do that. So talk about the deep breathing strategy. I'm interested in that.
The one I've been using lately has been like really focusing on my exhale. So like I usually start with the exhale. First of all, I will like exhale for a count of 8 and then hold it. And then I will inhale for a count of 4. And for me, that like has been helping a lot. I'm terrible at remembering to do my deep breathing, to be perfectly honest. But like when I do like, I feel like it kind of centers myself and I feel like ready to tackle more tasks. I also try to like break down my tasks too, not like try to tackle like the whole task at one time, and make it more manageable for myself. And then like take those breaks. Like maybe it's like, I'm cleaning and every 15 minutes I need to sit down, and like getting in that comfortable position too, not just sitting down uncomfortable, like get in that comfortable position, whatever like I feel like my body needs, and then use that time to like do the deep breathing as well.
Yeah.
I think that's also a struggle with, it's like, okay, I need to get this done. And it's hard to like It's almost like resting is a reward. It's easy to get into that mindset of going, okay, I can rest once I get this done versus I can get this done if I actually rest.
While you're on your phone, come on, I know it's in your hand. Head on over to Spoonful of Strength's Etsy shop at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. That's spoonful with 2 L's. We have a wide variety of t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, and so much more. Anything in the shop can be customized based on your illness. We have sizes from extra small to 5X and many colors to choose from. The best part is most items ship within 2 business days. So head on over to spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com.
The final one is position. So talk about how important or how like and positioning can help you maneuver throughout the day.
So the way that we position our bodies and also the things around us can help us save energy. So for example, when it comes to positioning your body, if you're going to lift something heavy off the ground, it's important to protect your joints. So making sure that you are lifting things in a way that protects your joints, your back is very, very important. And also, like if we don't position our bodies correctly, that can lead to soreness and we, can become more tired and it also can lead to injury. So really paying attention to how we're positioned when doing those tasks is very important. But then also how we position things, for example, around the house or in our environment. So for example, for me, like I make sure that I have everything that I need within reach. So I don't have to, like, if I'm using my wheelchair, I don't have to stand up as much. Like I have everything kind of level.
It also says here, position your bodies to sit up straight so that we can engage in deeper breathing. That's a hard one for me. I know I don't have a lot of core strength and so I'm a slump sitter, but that does, especially if you can do it while you're sitting down, maybe put a pillow in the small of your back to kind of try and pull that up. That makes a lot of sense of being able to focus on your breathing and sitting up and all of that. And there's a lot of, equipment available. You put a couple down here as far as some assistive devices. What are some of your favorite assistive devices to help with energy conservation?
I use my hip kit. That's because, I have had, multiple leg surgeries and I love having a reacher so I don't have to, feel like I'm reaching too far. Like, if I'm laid up in bed or using my sock aid, that's probably one of my favorites to do. So I don't have to bend over and, cause more pain. And it saves energy too. I love using like dressing sticks or shoe horns. One I started using recently is one of those electric can openers because of my wrist situations. And that has been one of my favorites because I didn't realize just how painful opening cans were until I started having these wrist issues. So those are definitely some of my absolute favorite adaptive equipment that you can use during your day to save your energy.
The sitting in comfortable position during the breaks and that stood out to me only because like over the last couple days, every time I notice that I sit, if I'm working on something, I tend to sit and I'm sitting on the couch, I sit. That's to show that I'm used to working with kids. I sit crisscross applesauce type thing of, sitting there with your leg. And then when I get up, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was not good for my hips. So like being aware of, when you're sitting in positioning your body in a certain situation, when you get up and actually move out of that position, being aware of how does your body feel after being in that position. And if you're struggling with that, then maybe that's not the position you should be sitting at, or maybe you should be. I don't, Kate, you as an OT, you may have better insight of going, okay, crisscross applesauce actually is helping you and it's telling you that you need to be doing that, or is it, okay, your body doesn't like that, so don't sit crisscross applesauce.
I mean, it probably, completely depends on, what your condition is, because like I'm thinking about, my condition and the way that I sit. Like, I mean, I was a W sitter, so like I sat with my, like my feet pointed behind me, and, there's controversy over whether, W sitting is okay or not. And I mean, for me, that was the most comfortable position because of my condition. Even like sitting in chairs now, like as an adult, like I am not sitting in the most, reasonable way, but that's like how my body feels like it needs to be in a certain position, and I just kind of go with it. But it really depends, I think, on like, what your situation is. But I really like the point that you brought up about how we need to listen, like, and pay attention to our bodies. So like if you are sitting in that position that felt uncomfortable once you stood up, like, it's important to think, okay, like maybe that means that I, can work on, my flexibility, but don't necessarily like force yourself into that position, if you know what I mean.
I love this because I think it's just a great tips on things that you can think of. A lot of times we go through the day and we're tired and we're not thinking about the things that we do that are causing us to get tired. And so this is a great reminder of things of, if we're finding we're getting exhausted every day, just looking at these tips and going, oh yeah, I did that. I didn't do that. And maybe I should try that. I think it's just put together great. And like I said, I'm going to share it with everybody. But if you had to leave our listeners with one thing as far as conserving your energy for chronic illness, what would that be?
I would say to find balance in your day and to absolutely allow yourself to rest if that's what your body's telling you. Make sure that you're listening to your body.
I think these pointers are fantastic, and it definitely pushes the mindset that a lot of us tend to have of, oh my gosh, I'm having a great day. I need to really get all this stuff done while I'm feeling well.
Yeah, I think just sometimes people go through life and they're just like, I'm just exhausted every day. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And they just feel like they're living in this tornado, that this at least will give them some tips of being able to look at what they're doing and what they can do to make it better. So we really appreciate the fact that you've brought all this information for our listeners. And what's next for you?
So the next step, I have an appointment with my surgeon next week for my leg, and we will talk about when we want to start on, because I have to have my tibia fixed too. So it kind of looks like I'm going to have surgery on my tibia probably early next year. And then, I mean, my goal is to get through my leg completely before I start on the arms, because the arms are not an easy fix either. They actually have to do osteotomies on my arms. So that means they'll break it and everything, they break the bone and hold it together with plates and screws. But I really don't want to be on crutches, and have had, the surgery on my arms. So the goal is just to get all the surgeries to finish with my leg and then move on to the arms. And it's probably, it's definitely going to take another few years before I have all of this situated. So process. And I need to remember my 4 P's in that process.
That's right. Your recovery, you got your 4 P's right here and you'll be all set. Yeah. Well, for anybody who hasn't listened to Kate's story, we'll also tag in the description the link so that you can go back and listen to our interview with Kate, which happened a few months ago. where she talked about her miserable malalignment syndrome, and you can follow along with her journey. We'll attach her Instagram page as well. So thank you so much. You're the best.
Back.
I know.
Yes, we are so.
We can't wait to have you on again.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fun to bring somebody back on and use all that information that you've got in your head and hopefully help some people out there. So, thank you. We appreciate you. So, keep us updated on how you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure will.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Bye.
Kate.
Bye.
We are so happy that Kate joined us and got you some great tips. Keep listening here as we are going to be interviewing Bill. He's going to talk about his neurosarcoidosis. And so let's bring him in and hear a little bit about his story. So welcome, Bill, to the podcast. We are so happy that you're here today to talk about neurosarcoidosis. And we want to start out real quick and just have you kind of do an introduction to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into to anything else.
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's I listened to some of your episodes prior, and they're very informative, and thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to kind of share my story. Give you a little bit of background of myself. I'm currently 40 years old. Grew up in the Philadelphia region. Was an athlete. Played multiple sports growing up. I ended up going to the University of Maryland, playing lacrosse there. After that, I was drafted into the professional leagues, both field lacrosse and indoor lacrosse, and that was a bulk of my adult life until I was suffering some noticeable cognitive decline, physical decline, and I was diagnosed with neurosarcoidosis in 2014, and that kind of just started my journeys in the hospital. I've just recently had my latest brain surgery this past January, and still kind of recovering from everything, but it's been quite the journey, and I'm just excited to be here and just share my story. So thank you again.
What were the initial symptoms that you were noticing that made you feel that something is going on?
Yeah, so this was something that my family and close friends and loved ones noticed before I did. I noticed some cognitive or some physical decline. Like I was having these issues on my right side of my body. I was training for playoffs and just couldn't do the type of training that I normally do. It got to the point where I was driving down the shore to a friend's house, and I couldn't even drive the car because my right leg was bothering me that much. So I had my wife drive the car to the place or to the friend's house, and they noticed for probably a little over a month that like I cognitively was just a little off. I was just kind of staring in the daze, wasn't having like dialogue that I would normally have, and it was just very noticeable. Like I said, my loved ones, and they knew something was up. So a good friend of mine that I went down to the shore with, he suggested I go get an MRI or go get checked out, which triggered me to go get an MRI, which eventually diagnosed me with my disease.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain what exactly the neurosarcoidosis is, what that means?
Yeah, so when I went to the hospital, I got an MRI, and they saw a large mass in my left frontal lobe. So that's obviously a little scary when a doctor comes in and tells you that, and says you have to be transferred to a major hospital immediately. Luckily in Philadelphia, I'm surrounded by some pretty good hospital care. So I had the option of Penn or Jefferson, and I end up going to Penn, and they couldn't figure it out. They were running all these tests, blood work, everything. They couldn't figure it out. It's very similar to MS. They didn't know if it was brain cancer. They didn't know what it could be. So they were just ruling out everything. And neurosarcoidosis is very difficult to diagnose. So the best way to diagnosis is through a biopsy, where they send it down to pathology. So once we kind of canceled or everything came back negative, they wanted to take a shot at that diagnosis. So they did a biopsy on my brain, because that's where the lesion was. And when they did that, they sent it down to pathology, and that's when it came back that I had neurosarcoidosis. I had no idea what it was, never heard of that word, couldn't even pronounce that word for for the first couple months after diagnosis. But after that biopsy surgery, I was in recovery. I was in the ICU, and it was like going on 24 hours, and I didn't come to. And I was hiccuping, and the doctors do their rounds, in the ICU. They do I think, twice a day, morning and night. And the doctors, when they heard I was hiccuping, that tells them my brain's swelling out, and they had to do emergency craniectomy. They kicked everybody out of the room. They intubated me on the spot, and they rolled me down for emergency surgery to do a craniectomy, where they removed the whole side of my left skull to give my brain space to swell out. And then when I woke up from that surgery, no idea what happened. I thought I was just going in for a biopsy. And to be honest, my memory was very foggy before going in. So I don't even remember that much about it. But all I knew is when I came out of that surgery, the craniectomy, I couldn't feel or move anything on the right side of my body. And I was, temporarily paralyzed, similar to like a stroke victim. Couldn't do anything on the right side. So that was a really scary part of my journey that was early on, and I had to overcome. So I spent a couple weeks in the hospital, being monitored by the doctors, and eventually progressed to rehab to learn how to walk. Speech was an issue too, because it affects, your speech, your motor skills, and your emotion. And, I was supposed to be in Bryn Mawr rehab for a couple months, and I ended up getting out of there in about 2 weeks because I was just so focused on getting better. And, I think my youth, I was 30 at the time. My youth definitely, was a benefit. And, I bounced back quicker than I thought. So, I was still learning, still struggling to walk and everything, but I was to the point where they were, okay with sending me home. So I went home, like I said, I think October, like 23rd or something.
Yeah. And so I did a little bit of research. Neurosarcoidosis is an inflammatory disease that affects your nervous system. So that mass in the frontal lobe, was that just swelling?
No, and I don't think I went into it too deep, but yes, it is an inflammatory disease of the central nervous system, which explains all the symptoms I was having on the right side, pain in my right hip, cognitive, dullness. And it is, so that lesion it's called granulomas. So it's a collection of like inflammatory cells that build up in that area. So that's where they went in and they scraped the biopsy, or they scraped the lesion out to do a biopsy of it. And that's where they were able to diagnose me. Okay. And that's also kind of why I was paralyzed after surgery. It's because the obviously the left part of the brain affects the right side of the body. So when they did that craniectomy, and I guess throughout the biopsy, I'm not even 100% sure exactly which surgery would have caused it. Probably the first surgery, the biopsy. But that's what I was dealing with when I woke up.
Were you still involved in lacrosse at the time?
Yes. I was, I think, as I mentioned, I was training for the playoffs. We had playoffs. I was playing for Ohio at the time, and we did lose. So that was the end of August. We lost in the playoffs, and all this started September 4th is when I went and got the MRI at a local hospital, where they transferred me to, major hospitals. September 19th was the biopsy. September 20th was the craniectomy. And, and then I lived without half a skull, half the skull removed till about January 29th. So a little over 4 months. I was with half a skull.
Join Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, a community open to everyone. Whether you have a chronic illness or support someone who does, you are welcome at Spoonful of Strength. You'll get preview clips of the upcoming episodes and insight into my world as a spoonie. That's Spoonful of Strength, Spoonful with 2 L's, on Instagram. The granuloma or the lesion that you had in your frontal lobe, do you have chances of it appearing in other places? Or is this just like a one-time thing and you have the surgery and then you're done?
Great question. And usually it does travel to other organs, and neurosarcoidosis in general, that's more common. Most of the time it's in your lung. It's pulmonary sarcoidosis. You can have cardiac sarcoidosis, optic sarcoidosis, eyes, heart, lungs. The neuro is of the central nervous system. So that's usually, it's either in the brain or the spinal cord. And that's what affects the central nervous system. It does travel. So it can go to my heart, my lungs, my eyes. But it's a little over 11 years now. And it hasn't traveled to any other location. So doctors say that it's most likely just going to stay dormant in my nervous system. But like I said, it does travel. That is common.
Yeah. And I imagine with MS, where the lesions are, I have lesions in my frontal lobe, and that I could be getting this wrong, but from my understanding, controls a lot of the processing that the brain does. And so I have a lot of issues with processing. So is it similar to that where that was, the cognitive symptoms are going to match up with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I still have some comprehension issues or struggles to this day. Most people, they don't notice, they don't kind of see it. I notice it, internally. The thing with the brain, it's not visual. Like he sees, you're not wearing a cast or on crutches or anything like that. So I notice internally, my thoughts are a little bit slower, comprehending things a little bit more difficult. But again, it's not very detrimental to my life. It's something that I just internally deal with.
Yeah.
Are there other effects that you struggle with on a daily basis?
Yes.
In addition to the cognitive.
Yeah. So, obviously with the paralysis, it took me some time to gain function back on the right side of my body. And, I still feel a little weakness on the right side of my body, but just kind of give you a recap of how that kind of all transpired.
Yeah.
When I went to Bryn Mawr Rehab, they put me through some exercises. I had to take some laps around the hallways, and, my right leg's dragging, can't pick it up, this, that, and the other. And there was some struggles there, but I just, whatever exercise they gave me, I can say this now, but like I did more than they allowed me to, because obviously, being my brain exposed, with having half my skull removed, I was a liability. So they didn't want me to do anything extra than what they told me, but I took it upon myself to just do some extra things, extra exercises while they weren't looking. And I was just really focused on getting that movement back. But yeah, I do experience some other ailments, but nothing too much that's going to be too noticeable to the naked eye. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but I've recently had my latest brain surgery in January, and that has had a little bit more effect on me since, more impact on the comprehension and just things that I deal with on a daily basis.
I was just curious because obviously I assume they went in after a certain time period and did reconstructive surgery on the skull.
So when they removed my skull, they gave me the option of put my skull back on or get a titanium plate. I was like, I want my skull, So they typically when something like that happens, from my understanding, is they remove the skull and they put it back in your body and like your abdomen, most likely, to keep the blood flowing, to keep it alive. Well, they decided to put it in a cryogenic freezer, which was relatively new technology. And when they did that and they put it back in my skull over the course of the next couple of years, I found out that the blood flow didn't take, and that part of the skull pretty much was dead, which caused a litany of other issues that I dealt with beyond that. Eventually, kind of give you a broad overview of everything. I've had 7 total brain surgeries, and they eventually put a titanium plate on and a craniotomy in October 2021. And then the most recent surgeries I got in January was to address my CSF leak, which was again caused by Chiari malformation surgery that I got in May of 2021. They replaced it with an artificial bone because the titanium plate wasn't fully covering the skull, which apparently isn't too uncommon. But the doctor I saw out in LA, he wanted to redo the craniotomy and put an artificial bone to completely cover the skull.
That was the one you had in January?
Yep, this past January.
This past January. Okay. Were they able to take care of that? We've interviewed a couple other people that really got into more trouble and with the leaks. Were they able to successfully take care of that?
Yeah, that was the most impactful condition I had to deal with, because that I dealt with that for almost 3 years. And that's actually how I started listening to this podcast. Was I looked up CSF leak, and I came across I think it was Casey or Kara.
Carissa. Yeah.
Carissa.
Carissa.
Yeah.
And I listened to that podcast, and I just had a good experience for once. So I was, like I said, I live in a really good location between Penn, Jefferson, and Hopkins, an hour and a half south. I went to all 3 of those hospitals, and they're looking for a CSF leak up and down the spine. I got multiple myelograms. I got multiple blood patches to try to fix it, blind blood patches, because nobody could find the leak. And nothing was working. And then my Penn neurologist, who is my main doctor that I communicate with, she referred me to a doctor out in LA, Dr. Shivink at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and he's a CSF leak specialist. And so, with the condition I was in, I was willing to do anything to for a possible solution. And when I went out there, he has like a way of looking for these leaks with a high resolution camera during a myelogram. And so they have to knock you out for it. So the one day he looked on the left side of my back, the other day he looked on the right side of my back with this high resolution camera. And he didn't find anything. And I was like, I got pretty disheartened. Like, this is not my last hope, but this is like really important to me that something gets found, or we find a solution here. And he's like, we have another option that we can do. And what he ended up doing was it's called a duroplasty laminectomy. So you have a sacral cistern at the bottom of your spine. It's like a sac. It's like a little balloon, it was explained to me. It's like a little balloon that holds excess CSF. So what he did a back surgery where he removed 2 of my backbone. He got access to that sac. He shrank that sac, which forced CSF back up into my head, raising the CSF fluid in my brain or in my skull, lifting the brain back up to where it should be. And I think that was the fix. I think that was the main, solution to my issues. But after that, he had to do another craniotomy because he wanted to do both. He wanted to make sure that everything was addressed while I was out there, because I was coming from 3,000 miles away on the East Coast. So he wanted to just do both of those surgeries. So that was life-changing. And that was just, a little over 8 months ago.
Wow. So are you feeling better? Were you having like those Chiari headaches and all of those symptoms that we know of? Have you seen improvement since the surgery?
Complete improvement.
Oh, that's great.
Physically, mentally and emotionally and spiritually and cognitively, like there's still some issues, but again, people won't notice. I'm sure you guys can't pick up on anything. But yeah, physically it's been, like I said, life-changing. Because when I was listening to Chris on the podcast before, like I could identify with everything she was saying with those just headaches, just standing up. I was constantly bending forward because not only did I have headaches, but I had back issues that were much worse because of this. And I always said, if you fix the head, you're going to fix the back. Doctors had no connection between the two. And I said, I don't know, because when I had the craniotomy in May or October of 2022, I'm sorry, 2021, I had temporary relief of the head and of the back. So I just connected those two. The doctors really didn't. And for whatever reason, when I got the surgeries in January out in LA at Cedars-Sinai, the back improved dramatically. I still have back issues. I still bend over. Very, very limited. Like only if I've been standing on my feet for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I was bending over literally once a minute for both my head and my back when I was going through all that. Beyond
what have you found is
beyond the temperament, I was falling asleep. I wouldn't even call it falling asleep. I was nodding off, passing out, once an hour, just couldn't keep my eyes open, nose running, just bodily functions just were not operating on a normal level. There's a long list of symptoms, but those are just a few things that I can think of at the top of my head.
Yeah.
what do you find is the most difficult change that you've had to make?
In a good way, it's enabled me to do the things that I've always wanted to do. I'm working out, I'm watching what I eat, taking care of myself. I'm able to stay awake, and all those things are good. The most difficult thing is I have concern. Like I don't feel I'm as intelligent as I was before. My speech, formulating thoughts, conveying sentences, formulating, words that I want to, express to people. It definitely just takes a little, even beyond the neurosarcoidosis, that time period, from this CSF leak to now to getting fixed. That's what I'm noticing the most now is just my ability to formulate my thoughts and words to express how I'm feeling and to express the information I want to convey.
Yeah, that can be mentally challenging. I deal with cognitive issues a lot, and it's so frustrating because you have all these things in your mind and it's just not processing out. And my husband, we've been married almost 25 years. He's so good. Like he could finish my sentences. He knows exactly what I'm saying. And it's crazy, but I know that's frustrating. And to kind of tie it all in with everything you've been through, how have you dealt with the mental part of the neurosarcoidosis as well as the CFS leak and all of that? How have you been mentally?
I've actually been pretty okay understanding, like, hey, listen, this isn't uncontrollable. Like there's nothing, they don't, it's a very rare disease. They don't know where it originates from. It could be from environmental, it could be genetic. They really don't know because there's not a lot of information or research done on it. So I've been okay. Like, all right, so there's nothing, I can't blame myself for something I've done or whatever it may be. Like it's the hard part is just, and it happens all the time where like I said, I can't get everything out that I want to say that's going on in my head. Just getting through, conversations with people is a little bit more difficult. And I preface a lot of things a lot of times like, hey, listen, I have some brain issues. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to say things or to get my thoughts out. So I'll try to preface it to conversations I'm having, but really I just try to, just control what I can control, which is like giving my best effort, having a good attitude about it and just really focusing on what I can control.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody came to you and asked for advice, for those that are going through a similar journey, what piece of advice do you have for them?
Will be exactly that, like to take care of yourself, obviously, but you got to be your own advocate. You got to understand, you know, things that you're putting in your body and like what it does to you. Like a big thing that I did get into since coming back from LA that I've always had an interest in and I've always watched and focused on was, what I eat, my nutrition. And, what I've learned even more deeply since coming back from LA is unfortunately like a lot of food that's sold to the public is like not good. Like it's really bad and really sad and frustrating to know what these food companies put in their products and feed. And I have two kids now, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And during my whole CSF league experience, they were, my daughter's whole life, she was born, I was dealing with it. My son was about 6 months old when I developed it, so I just came back to reality, 8 months ago, and I feel like I became a father, became a husband again. And I've taken a big interest in the nutrition of my children, not only for them, but for myself as well. And you just got to be very cognitive and careful and do some, just do a little bit of digging and learn a little bit more about like nutrition and the food and a combination of what you're putting in your body and what energy you're giving out, exercising, do all the things that are, that experts talk about all the time, right? Eat well, exercise, mindfulness, practice those good habits. And that would be something that will help you carry you through some difficult times. It certainly did for me.
Yeah, that's great. Do you feel like you're, and you kind of mentioned that you feel like you're starting off again, getting a fresh start. Do you foresee any issues with either the neurosarcoidosis or the CSF leak? Do you foresee anything that could be coming back, or do you feel like you're kind of good to go right now? Fingers crossed.
That's the greatest thing about the disease and the conditions I suffer from is every doctor I ask that question to. Yeah. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. Right. You're doing okay today? Good to go. Yeah. It really takes that whole one day at a time and really magnifies it. So that's how I try to live my life, just one day at a time, just appreciating, living in gratitude. And I will say, I've gone through struggles. Another thing I don't think I mentioned before is like I've seen therapists. I'm currently, set up to see a cognitive therapist to deal with some of these cognitive issues with processing and speech and, emotion that comes with it. So reaching out for help is definitely something that I'm not afraid to do. And I think it's only going to benefit myself. But yeah, that's what I think is really important.
Yeah. Self-care is so important, and that includes what you eat and the therapy and all of that. It's so important. And I'm so glad that you have embraced that and are really taking good care of yourself, because we hope that there's nothing bad on, going forward.
I get so excited when I hear how so many people find mindfulness. That's like, that just seems to be such an underlying theme, because that's where I became through my cancer journey, was interested in like embracing the mindfulness as well. So I always love hearing that seems to be an underlying for many of our guests, of an important factor to help you maneuver through your daily life through that.
Yeah, meditation is obviously an important part of practices that I, try to do as much as possible. Do I do it enough? Absolutely not. But that's just one of the, many things that I try to do to take care of myself, because I find that to be very beneficial as well.
I think it helps not let your mind get away from you, so to speak, as far as like the bad. It's easy to go down that like desolate pathway, and like that meditation is a good tool to keep you from being more, or help you stay more centered.
Easier said than done.
I know.
I'm still working.
It's definitely
on it.
one of those practice what you preach, but not always easy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm seeing cognitive therapy.
That's great. You'll have to let me know how that goes, because I've not done cognitive therapy. So, let me know how, if you find that beneficial, it might be something I might be interested in. So we thank you for coming on today. This is a subject neither one of us had heard much about, and we were really interested in. And we really appreciate you coming out and talking a little bit about that, and giving us a little bit information for that.
No, thank you. And I really appreciate, you guys having this platform to allow people like myself to come out and share their stories. Because like I said, I heard it from Carissa on this podcast, and that's why I reached out to her to kind of give her that information to see if that could be helpful to her. And hopefully it was. That's, just to have something like this for people in our situations, it's really, really important and helpful.
We'll keep doing it as long as people want to share their story. So
Yep, absolutely.
Will do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This was such a good episode. I think it's so filled with so much information and just such great guests. I was so excited that we had Kate on, and then of course meeting Bill was amazing. And what do you think? I think this was just a filled episode of so much wonderfulness, I think.
Yeah, lots of good information. I love that it was through one of our guests on episode, through Carissa, that Bill found us and reached out. And it's just that it's it's encouraging, I think, to realize that we actually are helping make those important connections that might help others.
Join us next week, where in part 1, Tina and I will be talking about living with multiple illnesses. Quite a few of us live with more than one chronic illness. And so we talk about the ups and downs of living with more than just one chronic illness. In part 2, we bring in David, our spoonie, and David's going to talk about his epilepsy and type 1 diabetes. So join us next week. We hope that you have a great week ahead, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.
Don't forget to follow the podcast, click on the bell to receive notifications on new episodes, and give us a rating. Feel free to send us a comment on the episode you just listened to. Thank you for being a loyal listener.